Welcome back. It's time now to take a look at the top business stories. Abu Dhabi launches first business sentiment index. Emirates Airline looking at 5-year dollar bond. And Japan's factories crank up production. Let's look at the equity markets first. It's the last trading day of the month. The DFM gained 5% in May. The ADX, however, fell 2% since the end of April. Today, the DFM was up 1.6% to close at 1,559 points. Arab Tech Holding was one of the best performers with a plus of 3.9%, followed by the Dubai financial market, which rallied 3.3%. Logistics company Aramex gained 2.2%, while Dia Development rose 2% and Drake & Skull International was up 3%. And Union Properties gained 4.5%. Top performer on the DFM, though, was an insurance company, Taka Full House, which rose 9.3%. 201 million shares were traded, valued at 221 million dirhams. And over in the capital, the ADX General Index was up 0.7% to reach 2,639 points. Best performing sector was the services sector, as Abu Dhabi National Hotels added 9.8%. Also among the top performers, Gulf Cement Company, which gained 4.6%, and Arkan Building Materials, which rose 4.4%. Etisalat was up 0.5%, while Qatar Telecom was down 1.2%. 82 million shares were traded, valued at 135 million dirhams. And let's now look at the GCC equity markets. The country's main benchmarks ended mixed today. The German magazine Der Spiegel over the weekend reported that the EU may not provide its next tranche of promised funding because Greece has failed to make agreed-to progress in its fiscal accounts. To talk about this issue further, we're now joined by Tim Fox, Head of Research and Chief Economist at Emirates NBD. Welcome, Tim. Wouldn't it be like denying a starving person an essential, vital piece of bread if the EU says we're not going to give you the next tranche of money? Doesn't that mean a default is inevitable?
Well, I think the most likely outcome is probably that the money will be provided, but it will be tied to quite strict conditionality, which means that Greece will have to abide by even greater austerity measures and enforcement of those measures. If, by any chance, that the funding is not provided, I think the next most likely option is probably that you will get some, or attempt to get some kind of voluntary restructuring, a kind of orderly restructuring of Greek debt. But the danger of doing that is that the orderly nature of that restructuring turns disorderly, and that could ultimately lead to some kind of default. So there are risks attached if they don't provide, significant risks if they do not provide the funding in the near term.
Let's get out the crystal ball. What if Greece would default? Let's paint that picture. Doesn't that mean the beginning of the end of the single currency, the euro?
Well, I think a default by Greece need not necessarily cause default elsewhere. And the Eurozone can remain intact, but its credibility would be damaged by such an event. And I think that is why there will be all efforts made to prevent that situation happening. But I think the Eurozone is already under a certain amount of question about its credibility. I think it's going to be very hard for the authorities to reach a solution which provides a long-term answer to Greece's debt problems, which are significant and substantial. And I think the Eurozone will probably survive intact. It may end up being continuing, only though without perhaps Greece's continued membership. That's not the situation just yet, but it's possible down the road that Greece may find the conditions too difficult to maintain its membership of the Eurozone. But the Eurozone itself will remain probably intact.
Well, let's hope for that. Let's hope so. Thanks for coming in, Tim. See you in 2 weeks. And now to our top stories. Abu Dhabi has launched the region's first ever business sentiment index, labeled the Abu Dhabi Business Cycle Indicator. Released every quarter by the Abu Dhabi Department of Economic Development, the index provides quarterly information about the health of the Emirates economy to help business leaders, investors and consumers make better economic decisions. The indicator will be based on 5 sets of data: the number of new businesses set up in Abu Dhabi, companies' assessment of the current business situation, data on personal incomes, the performance of the stock market, as well as oil prices. The index is part of Abu Dhabi's long-term development strategy known as Vision 30. Emirates Airline is rumored to issue a benchmark 5-year dollar bond within the next days, a banking source told Reuters. Final pricing and launch is expected to take place sometime this week after Dubai's flagship carrier wrapped up its bond roadshow in Switzerland on Monday. It began in Hong Kong on May 23rd. HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley and Emirates MED have been mandated as joint lead managers and book runners for the bond sale. Emirates had initially wanted to tap the bond market in March, but withdrew its plans after investors demanded higher yields. Today, now that the spreads in the bond markets have improved, Emirates faces a better environment to stock up on funding, experts say. And in our fast financial news, Abu Dhabi International Petroleum Investment Company, which owns stakes in companies such as carmaker Daimler and Virgin Galactic, saw its assets rise 15% year-on-year in 2010 to $48 billion. IPIC, which is fully owned by the Abu Dhabi government, also stated that net profit stood at $1.3 billion last year, up 30% from 2009. And net equity rose 12% to over $14 billion. The Qatar Exchange has confirmed that foreign ownership of stocks will, for the time being, remain limited at 25%. However, this law could be changed in a year from now. Meanwhile, Qatar plans to create a secondary market for small and medium-sized companies, with lighter and more flexible regulations than in the main exchange. And after the break, we'll run you through what's making the headlines in international business today.